afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast Addendum. This time, though, we're looking at the upcoming patch. The patch notes hits basically just yesterday, and more or less everything from the balance preview sort of period that has fallen in, plus they've added a few extra things. Of course, just to summarize, of course, to sort of make sure we got in, I'll try and hopefully remember everything, but basically there's been a lot of serious change with this balance preview, and of course a big, really big thanks to Relic, of course, the community. For Relic, of course, just, deciding to do this. The community, of course, for participating, provide a lot of feedback. But, of course, Relic is just putting all of this effort towards balancing and, making this game even better. Because there's a lot of good stuff. There are some bits that worry me. I'll get to those. But overall, it's a great step forward. And I hope we get to see more patches like these, more patches, actually trying to, again, sort of make things all better and hopefully, increase the streak diversity, overall making the game more exciting by giving players more options to how to play in. So in that sense, 2 thumbs up here to Relic and to the community. Good work there. Good work all around. So, what are the things that are changing? I mean, there's a lot there changing. Snipers, for example, overall, for the most part, get basically nerfed. They become easier to hit, and they can't quite shoot as fast. So that, for example, is a big plus. Right there. Just sort of the general purpose mines, stuff like the Soviets mines, the S mines, the British mines on there, also get nerfed. Basically, they can't, wipe entire squads. They have suppression now, so they have sort of more of a method for slowing down infantry. But, you're not going to say risking as the Wehrmacht, boom. Oh, I lost my entire squad. I mean, that's no more. That's basically, you can at most now lose 2 squad members, for example. And they can turn the effect now. So that's actually a pretty, step forward. Of course, at the same time, it does mean essentially it's a sort of an indirect buff to the Allies, since it's the Germans who overall have the smaller squad, so they'll still be most of all feeling the impact. The Allies, less so. So that, of course, can be a bit argued, but still overall step forward, because it means, you're gonna get less stuff wiped. I mean, that one's just gonna get like 2 thumbs up. Well, hey, less stuff wiped. Amazing. When you're the Wehrmacht, that is. So again, that is just, gravy. So, I mean, that's a big one there. They've also changed sort of random elements, like you can no longer get chance of damaged vehicles. You have to do stuff like Panzerfaust or mines. Mines in that sense, can no longer sort of just completely wreck stuff unless they're actually intended to mobilize. So no destroyed engine, for example, anymore, or anything like that. No random stuff. Basically, if the does damage, engine damage, it does what it's supposed to. Telemines will probably still do heavy engine damage, otherwise they've really sort of messed up there. And of course, so on and so on. Then Regal mines mobilized, same with the M6 mine there from the M20. So in that sense, they sort of more encapsulated what the different mines do, ensuring the anti-tank mines are still potent, just, don't perform quite, beyond their scope. For example, you're going to hit an S mine, all of a sudden you got heavy engine damage. So that's, a step forward as well there in that department. So that, that's great as well. All heavy vehicles more or less pretty much lose rear armor. They become easier to penetrate through there, except the Panther, which already, is pretty easy to penetrate from the rear. So no big surprises there. No big surprises there. Beyond that, I don't think there's sort of so much else there in the general department. Also, there's one thing here, actually. They've actually buffed a bunch of the bulletins. Not all of them, but there's sort of a series of bulletins. Some sort of new ones. For example, they activate the Hetzer one, no longer beats, actual Hetzer, but the Flamme Hetzer actually now gives a notable boost to its reload, so you can overall shoot faster. So that's stuff like interesting, but, call-ins will now be called in faster. Some units will actually produce faster. For example, like the 250.5 track, the M5 for the Soviets will now become 25% faster called on the field. Some units will have cooldown on the artillery lowered. So, I mean, while it's not, the big units that a lot of people probably want to, get these sort of buffs and bulletins, it's a start, and probably why they're sort of doing with some of these more fringe units in some senses where it probably won't have a massive impact. Just sort of see how do people react, so on there. So hopefully people, try, give a message, but response to this, not blah, murder, blood for the blood god, death to the false emperor. But, if something's wrong, say in a more calm, reasoned voice. And, of course, try to provide more constructive feedback, because overall, I think everybody more or less wants, more useful bulletins, and this is a step in the right direction. So let's, all together try and provide some constructive feedback towards Relic for that. So, hopefully we might see some other stuff, made a bit more useful. Perhaps, for them providing some bulletins with also some setbacks to offset bonuses. I mean, that would be pretty nice. So let's hope for that, everybody, shan't we? And again, let's be civilized. So that's, one of the bigger ones there as well. And, of course, we come to all the army buffs. I mean, the Soviet, for example, SU-5, for example, now sort of been changed more to an actual sort of tank, so I can take on heavy stuff. It shoots slower. Eventually, 2 bonus doesn't give more rate of fire. It sort of gives us more penetration and things like that, allowing you to just take on heavier armor more easily. So that's more sort of more geared towards dealing with the heavier armor, meaning Tigers and King Tigers, Panthers. It didn't really mean that so much before, and again, not a lot of people go for Panthers, but still, it does mean it's going to be more potent there, but also importantly, it's differentiated now from Mission 6, which was one of the problems. They were rather too similar. The SU-5 was basically a slightly improved SU-76, which really was a bit awkward. It wasn't quite as bad, as, the difference between a Panther and a Panzer IV, but, we're kind of getting there, but still, this, helps it stand out more. Other things that get buffed is the penal troops. They do a lot more damage. They've had their veterans one ability change. I hope we'll see more of that as well for some other units. I mean, there was some stuff back in the early beta, years back for some of the Wehrmacht with some getting marked targets and so on there. So hopefully that could also sneak its way in there for some of the German troops. That would be nice. But it does mean as the penal troops lose men, I mean, they'll begin fighting harder as well. So they've all sort of been, made more useful for a lot of the Soviet players. That's great there for them. T-3476 has got its machine guns buffed, meaning, again, it's going to be more effective versus infantry as well. So, again, there's a sort of series of improvements there for the Soviets. Overall, something nice for them as well. And they're probably a thing or two I've sort of forgotten about. That sort of roughly. Oh, yeah, the flare mine now can sort of guarantee a kill, but on the other hand, you can't actually expect to wipe an entire unit, even if they sort of pop out over buildings. On that sense, again, no, more 10 munition squad wipes. Good heavens, thanks for that. So that's, quite a buff for the Germans. Again, quite appreciate it. Thank you, Relic. So that's some stuff there going on there. Overall, again, that means so early game's going to be much stronger, but at the same time, the late game does pack more punch now as well, which all means the Soviets are going to be more dangerous, but they also have more options. You don't, feel so penned in as some players probably do. So that's, a good start there for them. Then we have the Americans. Their anti-tank gun gets buffed, though their take aim ability basically gets nerfed, which, I thought a bit sad, but overall does mean, of course, you have to worry about that. Now it's just more of a timed ability, but overall it does have slightly more penetration now. So that's, good for those players. The Scott now has a overall more improved damage, sort of profile when it shoots. That's also a plus, and the Americans is probably one of the bigger changes. Get some mortar, an 81mm mortar, basically meaning from the early game, meaning right off the bat, they can get artillery out there to support the men, lay down smoke, and all that. That one's going to have a huge impact. I'm a bit worried about it. Hopefully they sort of made some changes to the veterancy from the balanced PU, because otherwise that mortar can very quickly become very evil against the Germans, and that could actually give them quite some problems. So I'm a bit worried about that. To be honest. Also, the Jackson gets a buff, basically can see a bit farther now on its own, and farther veterans, meaning it can overall operate a lot more independently, which just means it's going to be a lot more nasty to deal for the Germans. So that's also a little thing there to keep in mind with. Plus, the Major's artillery barrage is improved. It's actually made useful. That's a plus. Sadly, they haven't done the same with, say, the elite armored Panzer Commander's artillery column. Sadly. Also, the captain loses his bazookas. Hallelujah. He actually has to pay munitions to get one, but at least he's no longer just, a free anti-tank team in the early game, which really just sort of skewed things up against, in particular, the Wehrmacht. So that's, again, great stuff. 2 thumbs up. That's really going to have an impact there. Going to make the captain as obvious. Plus, they've buffed the 50 caliber, including giving it armor-piercing rounds, allowing to better deal with light vehicles, but also just murder infantry. It's basically incendiary armor-piercing rounds. Don't even have 2 veterans up for it. So that's pretty mean stuff as well. That is pretty mean stuff as well, and that's definitely going to have an impact there as well on the fighting. And overall, again, mean the Americans now have much stronger options in many directions. Again, that one has me a bit worried, but again, not too much. For the British, sections now take a bit longer to veterans up. That's a plus for the Germans. Their artillery flares have all been buffed and now sort of perform a bit better in longer ranges. Sexton's been buffed, so, well, that one's a bit more useful. More shots fired, better AoE. Churchill's been made cheaper, so that should hopefully make it more useful if people realize it's, good. Counter-artillery for British advanced emplacements basically require munitions, and now it's time, so it's not just something to keep going on all the time. Not sure about that one. It's going to have an impact, I imagine, but the question, of course, is how big it's going to be. And there was one more, but I can't quite remember. Land matches I mentioned, they're getting nerfed. Basically requires 8 command points, or its rockets are less impactful. packed full. So that's, also a bit nice there. But beyond that, I can't quite remember the changes the British get, but I think those were the ones with the main sort of, interest and impact. Then we're looking at the Germans. Let's start with the Wehrmacht. The Wehrmacht rather gets the sort of short end of the stick as practically per usual, but, not completely without, merit at all. Basically, the pioneers can lay down sandbags, not a huge change, but might just give the Wehrmacht some options here and there for sort of finding a bit better versus the Allies, that's nice. Also, the Panzer Grenadiers Bundle Grenade, I imagine ultimately the Stormtroopers Bundle Grenade, has been buffed. It basically performs like a light gammon bomb now, that is. It performs like the bloody light the bundle grenade is supposed to, meaning it's something for the Allies to worry, and thrown into a good blob or weapons team, when it's sort of uncarefully handled weapon, it can probably pull off some good wipes. That rather means, again, the Germans also now have a lot more firepower on the units, and it suddenly makes a lot more sense with the 45 munitions there on a 340 manpower unit with 4 man. So again, that's good stuff. That's really one of the ones I've been campaigning for ages, and I'm going to take credit for that one. I'm going to take credit for that one. Probably haven't, been the one that sort of pulled it, but I'm still going to take credit for that one because I've really been asking for that one for ages. So again, good stuff there. And that's definitely something that's, again, it's going to help, the Germans, again, getting a bit more to work with. By the way, that buff also applies to the Oberkommando West. They didn't need as much, still had something, but still also performs better now. So that's grand as well. Otherwise, there's not really so much else for the Wehrmacht. It's basically Sturmpanzer slightly improved, slightly cheaper. Tier 3 slightly cheaper, Tier 4 also slightly cheaper. The problem is, though, it doesn't really fix the issue that Wehrmacht Tier 4 isn't quite worth it. I mean, that's basically the big issue. It's not really worth it. It means basically too much of a cost. Again, the Wehrmacht is the only faction with 4 tiers. And problem is, Tier 4 isn't very good, nor does it have anything sort of really offset it. No infantry upgrades, not saying a squad leader upgrade that allows you to even singularly upgrade your squad leader, so get something similar to the British, but, not on a mass basis, even just individually for, say, Grenadiers, Panzer Grenadiers, Pioneers, with maybe then unlocking ability. I mean, that could be an option as well, just, something, so the Germans, late game have a reason to go for Tier 4 and not just pack a bit more punch, because it's certainly not early game. They're sort of, the strongest at the moment anyways, and particularly not with the buffs the Allies are getting. So, making Tier 4, worth it would, be a nice thing. And that's probably where they're going to have to focus a lot there with the next patch, making the Wehrmacht, more of a fully fledged faction, because I still feel like, it's sort of a faction that's been left behind and left sort of to survive on gimmicks and other bits here and there, which is rather unfortunate. But that's basically it for the Wehrmacht. Sandbags, bundle grenades, slightly cheaper things, buff Sturmpanzer. Not a lot there compared to what some of the Allies are getting. Again, units completely revitalized, new units in some cases. There's a bit lacking there. I mean, overall, it's not going to be too bad for them. Again, mines will have less of an impact on them. Less wipes going on there, at least. So that's, again, it is, nice, but penal troops will probably be more factoring in, mortars and so on there. So it's not going to be smooth sailing, that's for sure, but perhaps less rough sailing might be accurate to say. Oberkommando West, though, get some larger changes as well. Of course, the big one, the one everybody's been asking for, including me. No more Panzer Strikes for the Full Grenadiers. Now it's a sort of assault rifle upgrade. There are only 2 for it. Increases anti-infantry, which is good. Though it requires one of the trucks there, plus they get access to Panzerfaust, Sturmpanzer set, get the Panzerschrecks. Meaning, sort of more the core units that has to do a lot of roles there for the Oberkommando West, but still, Volkswagen now sort of have a bit more impact as well, besides just being used for anti-tank blobs. So that's a start as well. That's a start. That's a plus. That's a positive. Now again, something we say, hey, this is nice. Plus, again, bundle grenades are buffed, but at the same time, the battle group headquarters mechanized rep now require you to upgrade them additionally for either the medics or the repair crew. So that's less good. Academy now gets a bit more extra sort of arc of fire, so it can shoot a bit further across, not further range, just slightly bigger arc of fire. So that again does mean you can sort of, hit a few more targets, I suppose. Also, the King Tiger, I think it's a bit cheaper. Or did they remove that? I hope they make it a bit cheaper since they did, remove some of the rear armor there. But beyond that, I don't recall there's so much else there for the Oberkommando West. At least nothing that sort of really requires anything. There's no actual buffs for, say, the Flammhetzer, which is still, questionably useful. And nothing to make the Jagdpanzer more useful, or the Panther again stand out, as a more useful choice compared to the Panzer IV, although it is still more useful than the Wehrmacht Panther because it's not, Tier 4. Also, still no 250 and half track either for the Oberkommando West, So, but overall, they'll stand out more and they'll probably be more effective. They'll have more options overall for playing against the enemies. I mean, that's great stuff there. Oh, yeah. They actually get the MD-34. I forgot about them. The MD-34 is no longer doctrinal. It has been buffed as well, so that's great. The Oberkommandos get some suppressor weapons. Plus, on top of that, so then the abilities, for the doctrines get slightly changed. Luftwaffe ground forces get a reconnaissance overpass. I would have liked to have seen something else there. And fortification now gets a howitzer, so they get a bit of a tool there as well, sort of more static. So that's something as well as opposed. But, reconnaissance over flight, I think they could have gone for something else. Something a bit more interesting, if you will. So there is that. There is that. So overall, again, a patch that really does a lot for the Allies. Quite nicely, something for the Oberkommando West. A bit for the Wehrmacht, but, again, I don't quite feel like, it's going to be all good. Again, basically they buffed the Allied early game, Allied late game, but, for example, the Wehrmacht late game, the Panthers, the Stern Panthers, hasn't really received anything. Again, the Firefly, for example, now shoots almost as fast as a Panther, but does more damage, meaning essentially it's more DPS, more range, and it's overall cheaper. I mean, what is the reason to go for a Panther then? For example, when old Tank has been buffed, but the Panther's still, a pretty poor choice to go for as the Wehrmacht, for example. So, again, I think for the next patch, they really need to, again, pull off another balanced preview, sort of have everybody join in, but then look into doing something about the Wehrmacht. They really need to look into it. I mean, particularly the late game, there's definitely a lot of issues there that, be done there to make the Wehrmacht more interesting. So, hopefully something happens there. I mean, I might be dreaming, but let's hope. And of course, more stuff for the, the bulletins, because again, that's nice to see as well in a sense. So, there you go. A bit of a longer balance patch talk there, but again, a lot of stuff coming up. Something interesting, something slightly worrying. Again, I'm slightly worrying about the Axis here again. Allies get the most buffs, some pretty significant buffs. Oberkommando gets some good stuff. The Wehrmacht, as usual, is sort of a bit more in the periphery. It seems like they're almost worried to touch the Wehrmacht, for fear of, pitchforks outside Relic headquarters. So that's a bit unfortunate. But again, overall, look forward to that one. I think June 21st, which is on Tuesday. So a lot there is going to be happening. And of course, shortly after, expect some episodes from me. They'll probably not right away, since I will actually be moving during that period, so there might be some slightly older patch episodes up until I can sort of get going again, once I've set up at my new place. Just a heads up there, in case, all of a sudden I go silent. That means something's gone tits up on my end. But anyways, lot to talk about there, but hopefully this has helped you out a bit there, gotten you excited for the patch coming up. Again, a lot of good stuff, but again, less good stuff for the Axis, but still, it's not a complete loss. There's still a lot of things that will benefit them, like, for example, mines nerfed. So there you go. Thank you all, and see you all for another exciting video. Cheers!